point is that politicians today do not need the establishment. They can raise money online. They can reach voters via Twitter and Facebook. They can hijack political parties through primaries like Trump, or they can just create their own parties like Fujimori, Correa, Bukele, and many others. Now, for politicians, this is liberating. They can now respond directly to voters without worrying what the establishment thinks. They can violate established norms. They can build a reputation as a maverick or an outsider who's no longer beholden to the elite and is willing to tell it like it is. They can say and do things that were previously off limits. Think about Trump. Think about Bolsonaro. In fact, candidates today can openly campaign against the establishment, which is actually a very good way to win votes. Again, there's always been a demand for populism in Latin America. What's really new is what's happening on the supply side. It is simply much easier to bypass the establishment than it was 50, 70, 100 years ago. When Perón beat the Argentine establishment in 1946, it took a miracle. It took the kind of mass mobilization that you only see once in a century. When Bukele beat the Salvadoran establishment in 2018, was not that hard. He just mobilized 2 million people on Facebook and Twitter. Pedro Castillo had the entire Peruvian establishment against him. And I mean entire establishment, business, media, political elite, all of Lima was lined up against him. Castillo had no party organization. He had no money. To be honest, he had no talent. And yet he still won. Now, this new scenario is much, much more democratic than the old one. Anybody can win the presidency today in Peru. Anyone can win the presidency today in the United States, maybe in Brazil. Peru's election last year may have been the most democratic election in the history of the world. A provincial nobody beat the entire Lima establishment. And because politicians no longer need the establishment, they can be more responsive to voters. They can give the voters what they want. But what happens? What happens when the people are so angry that what they want is somebody who will take a wrecking ball to Congress, to the Supreme Court, to other institutions of representative democracy? In other words, the weakening of the establishment opens the door to a bunch of new political actors. That's pretty democratic. But at the same time, it leaves democracies vulnerable to anti-system forces. And that can turn out to be authoritarian. This is a hell of a paradox.